Hi, welcome to 5 Minutes of Torah with the BI Rabbi. I'm Rabbi Adam Stein, your BI Video Rabbi of the week, and I hope you've all had a great Pesach. As we've made it through the 8 days of Matzah and are today commemorating Yom HaShoah, I'm recording this on Thursday the 12th, and Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaTzmaut up next week, I've been thinking a lot about Israel. It's for two reasons I've been thinking and reading a lot about Israel over the past week or so. One is the violent clashes on the Gaza border that sadly seen many deaths and injuries so far, perhaps more soon, though one can wish and pray for no more. I'm not going to dive into that sticky topic right now, except to express my anguish and concern both for our soldiers and decision makers on Israel's side of the border and for the residents of Gaza on that side. And to say that it's not easy to find, I've been trying to read, it's not easy to find even-handed analysis of this, although I did find a good piece by Michael Koplow, printed in the Baltimore Jewish Times and probably elsewhere, titled "The Simple Answers Are the Wrong Ones in Gaza." Often in world events, the simple answers are the wrong ones. The other reason I've been thinking about Israel a lot, and this one doesn't have simple answers either, is the Jewish world and the broader world have been really wrapped up in another issue for the past week or two and a few months before that, which is a controversy that started on April 2nd, but again, had been going on for a while, relates to refugees, asylum seekers, and it continues to this day. So for months, Jewish and Israeli organizations and refugee and asylum seeker groups have been urging Israel, led by the government, the coalition, Prime Minister Netanyahu, to do something compassionate, trying to find some good and reasonable and compassionate solution to the 35, 40, not sure how many thousand asylum seekers, mostly from Eritrea and Sudan, who are currently living in Israel. So there was a government plan on the table to indefinitely detain or send to Africa, sort of forcibly relocate them, I think most all of them, to undisclosed third countries in different parts of Africa, if they weren't going to leave voluntarily. And that was going to happen March 31st, or the deadline was March 31st, which was the first day of Pesach. They would each get a lump sum of $3,500 USD, but the Supreme Court issued an injunction, and the state was due to respond to the Supreme Court. On April 2nd, just before the state's response was due to the Supreme Court, we got this amazing announcement, a bombshell really, but a positive one. The deportations were called off. Israel had reached an agreement with the UNHCR, the Commission for Refugees, the UN Refugee Agency, not an agency that Israel usually has great relations with, but it was a great agreement that at least 16,000 of them, 16,250, would be settled with the UNHCR's assistance in Western countries, including Canada. And Canada was mentioned in all the news stories, under various programs with sponsorship, resettlement, family union, and labor migration schemes. And those who remained in Israel, another 16 or 20,000, they would get temporary residence for 5 years, which is not too bad, coupled with vocational training and a right to work, and they would have a better status in Israel than the current sort of up-in-the-air status. So Netanyahu or people in his government would set up a new agency tasked with the rehabilitation of southern Tel Aviv, where there's a huge amount of these asylum seekers, and there's a lot of difficult relations between them and the residents of South Tel Aviv. So fast forward only a few hours after that announcement, and we saw Netanyahu on TV saying, you know what, I'm putting on hold, I'm reconsidering, I need to talk with my coalition, with Aryeh Deri from Shas, and residents of South Tel Aviv. So now it's on hold, and then a few hours later, really only, I think, 5 or 6 hours, half a day maybe after the great big announcement, the announcement was made that the deal was canceled. I'm guessing maybe it hadn't been run through his coalition very well before the announcement of the deal. I just want to pause for a moment and mention something that's positive and beautiful, even though the deal falling apart caused a lot of anguish around the world and around Israel and the Jewish world. But speaking of Canada bringing in refugees, Canada's brought in so many refugees the past few years. Our own synagogue, along with Beth Tikva in Richmond, is working on bringing family in. But I was just reminded today that one of the first responders to the Humboldt bus, the tragedy that we're commemorating today with jerseys around Canada, even North America, sorry I'm not wearing one, One of the first responders is a guy whose parents are from Syria. He's an emergency room doctor, and he volunteered with doctors in Syria, helping many of his own people. Anyway, so the deal became off, and now we're back in limbo again. So my hope and my prayer is that some sort of good solution can be found for these asylum seekers. Now, of course, we need to figure out in some system which are true refugees, true asylum seekers, which ones are just seeking a better life or work, and some system needs to be set up. But hopefully we can get back to what looked like a wonderful deal. I'll wrap up and just tell you I received an email from HIAS today, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. They've been around a long time, since the late 1880s. They've probably had a hand in settling almost every Jewish family in North America in some way or another, especially at the beginning of the 20th century. And the email reminded me, and anyone who got it, that there are 65 million people around the world who are somehow seeking some sort of asylum or refugee status, wandering in a very different way that we did for 40 years, but still wandering. So today on Yom HaShoah, with Yom HaZikaron coming up next week, these two very sad commemorations, and then a happy one after that, Yom HaAtzmaut. My hope and my prayer is that we can keep some of the people around the world, in Israel, in Europe, in Africa, all sorts of places, in our hearts, as we particularly remember our 6 million. Shabbat Shalom.